Welcome to ReSounding, a podcast exploring the power of the arts in advocacy and in action. We talk with artists and activists, taking a deep dive into questions surrounding the causes of displacement, the strength and the vulnerability of people on the move, and the potential of the arts to shine a light on social injustice and to impact people's lives for the better. My name is Laura Hassler, and this month I spoke to Julie Trebault, Director of Artists at Risk Connection, a program of PEN America dedicated to defending artistic freedom around the world, fighting the effects of censorship and the persecution and silencing of artists. Good morning, Julie. Welcome to our ReSounding podcast. So glad to be speaking with you today.
Good morning, Laura. It's a pleasure to reconnect. Hi, how are you?
Fine, well, and so glad also, as you say, reconnect. You know, we were in touch when you were first starting Artists at Risk, right?
Yes, absolutely. I think you were probably the first person, one of the first person I had spoken when I started this project, the Artists at Risk Connection, probably late 2017 when we were about to launch.
Right, Artists at Risk Connection. Can you tell us a little bit how you came to this idea? Was it your idea, and how did it start? How did it begin?
Thank you, Laura. Actually, it was not my idea. It was an idea that came from the encounter of PEN America and a foundation, and the Andrew Mellon Foundation, almost now 7 years ago, in 2015. The Mellon Foundation contacted PEN America because they wanted to engage more in the field of artistic freedom. You probably know the Mellon Foundation. The Mellon Foundation is one of the biggest foundations here in the U.S. supporting art and culture.
And PEN being, sorry to interrupt you, but you mentioned PEN America, which is part of PEN International?
PEN America is the American chapter of PEN International. So we are the group supporting writers. So we are the membership organization in the US. So we represent over 7,500 writers in the country. We have an office in New York, but also in DC, in Washington, DC, and in Los Angeles. So we are known in the US to promote literature, but also defend freedom of expression.
Right. This is what PEN is known for, as defending freedom of expression. Right.
So how the group was funded, it was really like writers that were kind of seeking the need to be together, seeking the need to meet and talk about literature, but also talk about the state of the world, how they can, kind of progress freedom of expression, not only in the US, but also outside of the US. Really, the PEN Center right now, there are over 120 centers in the world. So it's a big network spearheaded by PEN International that is based in London. And the centers are funded by writers, for writers.
Okay.
And a lot of them have a freedom of expression component to defend the freedom to write of their members. And so what has happened is, for PEN America, for example, we have a program dedicated to writers at risk since decades. Probably, I don't want to say something wrong, but I would say at least for 30 or 40 years, we have helped persecuted writers around the world. For example, when Salman Rushdie had the fatwa on his head, we were one of the group who helped him to get out. Salman Rushdie became our president at PEN America, for example, but we have helped really hundreds of persecuted writers around the world. So that's how we got in touch with the Mellon Foundation, because the Mellon Foundation would say, okay, in the US, this group has the expertise to help writers at risk. Writers are artists. Let's connect with them and see what are the need and the gap. And so we started with the Mellon Foundation by saying we need a planning moment. We need to interview the field of art, the field of artistic freedom. We need to understand more, because of course we help persecuted artists, but our constituents are writers. So if we look at artists from all disciplines, we need to look at what is the current landscape of the protection for artists. So it's how it started. What made us, it was not only responding to a call of a founder, but also responding to the call of our members, actually, and people that were reaching out. Since a couple of years, we were receiving more and more calls for assistance from non-creative writers, and we were kind of stumbling upon, where to find the assistance, where to go, because of course our network at that time lies heavily on literature and writing, not on visual artists or musicians or filmmakers. So we didn't really know what to do with those non-creative writers. Like, for example, we have a bunch of cartoonists, musicians, filmmakers who were reaching out to us, and we're like, but to whom should we connect them? Where is the support for artists at risk? So that's how, everything came together.
Right. If I understand correctly, then the Artist at Risk connection, it was designed actually to increase your ability to respond to calls for help from artists who are being either censored or persecuted, imprisoned, exiled because of their artwork, and not only writers. Is that correct? So also musicians, also theater makers, and also to work with other organizations. Is that correct? When you talk about a network, so that you can refer people?
Absolutely. Yeah. So we kind of play, so the Artist at Risk Connection kind of plays the critical role of liaising between threatened artists and the pool of resources and organizations that are part of our network. Mm-hmm. That those organizations in our network will kind of support them and will bring like direct resources to direct assistance to them. So we play the role of connector.
So you're like intermediary between the artists who are looking for support and other organizations within your network that could actually provide that support.
Absolutely. So we have this first mission is like I would say the connecting mission, like the connector. Right. So we will connect those artists that are contacting us with our partners that will provide direct resources.
Right.
So just to give you an idea of the need, like since the beginning of the project, we have probably helped more than 500 artists coming from 71 countries. We receive an average of a call every 4 days. Every 4 days, an artist is contacting us and telling us, I'm, highly at risk. And the risk is, the risk go from censorship to death threats, torture, imprisonment, and even killing. There's also a number of cases. It's like the threats. The threats can start. There's like kind of different pattern of repression depending on the country. So we also realized very quickly, even with our organization that support them, that we needed to have a better footprint in the region. So like alongside this connection work, we have developed hub. Like ARC is present in Latin America, Africa, Asia, and I'm looking for someone in the Middle East. So we have people based in the region because we realized quickly in trying to assist and doing our best to assist those artists that most of the resources that we are playing with. So most of the organizations in our network that support them are based in the Western world, and most of the dying cases are coming from the South. And when we were looking at the kind of trends and pattern of what artists were asking and still continue to ask, we realized that a lot of them wanted to stay close by, wanted to stay in the region, didn't want it to relocate far away, 10,000 kilometers away, because it creates another burden for the artist. You become an artist in exile, and being an artist in exile is very taxing, and has of course has it's very important to have those fellowship program available, like the APF or my colleague at ICO, the International Network of City of Refuge. This is really critical that we can offer this to artists when they think that they will never be able to come back, or never be able to need it really like a more kind of mid-term, long-term program to recoup, to rest and respite, and then being able to go back to their country. But some of them won't be able to come back. This is the reality of the world, and that is it's much more, in a certain way, the inability to come back because you have an authoritarian government who won't disappear tomorrow. Like, for example, Sisi in Egypt won't disappear, and the pattern are there. So then artists have to stay put where they are, and then they need to, rebuild their life in a new country, in a host country. So we saw, when we start working in this field, that artists, most of them, where they were kind of seeking help to get out of their country for a couple of months, wanted to stay close by, wanted to stay in neighboring country, where they have still contact with their family, their friends, but also with their audience. And it's really important for you to understand, Laura, that I think I'm doing a good job when I am able to empower the artists to continue their work where they are. So safety is critical. First is like get them safe and secure. What you have also to understand, Laura, is like in this field, there are not that many emergency assistance. And most of the cases we are receiving are urgent. People cannot wait to receive a fellowship in 4, 5, 6 a year.
No.
They need immediate assistance, and there are very few organizations that have enough support and resources to bring them to offer immediate assistance.
Yeah. So our podcast, ReSounding, is part of the program of Art27, which is a network of arts organizations dedicated to social inclusion. And I'm sure that many of our members have contacts in their own work, in their own network, with artists who have fled for various reasons, or artists who have connections with people who are in need. Can you tell us, for example, if someone from one of our member organizations were contacted, as we were recently, as Art27 was recently, by an individual artist who was on the run or in need of quick help, asylum, what would be the route? How would people reach you? How would they find you? And what could they expect?
What would be wonderful is the network of organizations that are part of R27 will be able to direct and refer cases to us, as you are doing, Laura, for many years. And I think the easiest way is for the artists to look at our website. So to come to our website, the website URL is artists in plural at riskconnection.org, and then you click, and there's a yellow button on the top corner, right? So, just to be specific, say I am at risk, and then it opens an encrypted form where the artist can fill it's a tiny paragraph, really tell us in 800 words, so enough, but not enough for us to work on it, but enough for the person to explain what is happening to him. We have a number of languages spoken in the office, so the person, we invite the person to answer in English, but also in Arabic, in French, Mandarin, Russian, or Spanish. And we offer a response within 72 hours if we can take on the cases. So it means that what we will receive, for us, how we start the process, we'll receive this call from the artist. Most of the time it's a very daring call. The person will say, I have, received physical threats or digital threats. I am in Iran. I need your assistance with emergency fund or residency, and then we send them an intake form, and this intake form is probably 40 questions. So it's important for the artists to fill this form as much as they can, because we kind of mimic this form from other application for residency, emergency fund, all the kind of type of assistance they might ask. We ask the artists to tell us exactly what they need. We are not making any assumptions. So we ask the artist, what do you need? One of the side notes, what is the most type of assistance requested from artists since the beginning of the program are emergency assistance, which is cash money, relocation in like neighboring countries, so fellowship, residency, you name it, but close by. Legal and immigration assistance is critical, especially if you are facing a sentence, or you're on trial, or you're in prison, or you are looking to get out and you need immigration advice. And the fourth is advocacy. It's advocacy. It's raising awareness about the case. All of this. Going back to how we refer artists. Once we have reviewed this form, we are checking references. So it's critical that artists provide one reference to talk about the threats, another reference to talk about the art. The art, we are always making sure that the artist is an artist. We are never judging the work. We are there just to really help out. We base our kind of assessment on the threats. So it's important to have the threats narrative. It's important to really document the threats. And it's very difficult, like anyone facing risk, you won't probably, take a screenshot of the message or record the message. But as much as I will, say to artists, as much as you can document the threat, it's easier for the organization than to work with you and provide support because we can, corroborate the threats and check with our local partner. So, and then start really, once we have checked the references, and start really the conversation with the artist. And as much as we can, we try to answer quickly the artist and provide quickly the assistance. But as I say, this field is lacking daringly of emergency assistance and in general of resources. Because local organization, regional organization are under resources and under staff, so they will do what they could. But the idea is really kind of to bring adequate support and being together just to say, okay, this my program, we have a residency and we have a spot available in a month, so in a couple of weeks we could make sure that this artist is hosted with us. And the other organization said we have a grant, so we can put these two together and have movie. So it's extremely helpful to work with a regional partner because immediately what is available. And our international partner are also extremely important because a lot of them are the most have the biggest type of support, like the biggest help. And I want to mention my colleague at Protect Defenders, for example. Protect Defenders is a EU coalition based in Brussels that gather a number of human rights organizations to help human rights defenders, and they offer grants that are actually extremely helpful for us and for artists at risk. artists at risk are human rights defenders. An artist can be a human rights defender. Most of the people, most of the general audience, when you talk about artists at risk, they will say, "Oh yeah, Ai Weiwei or the Pussy Riot." But actually, we are helping emerging artists. Ai Weiwei and the Pussy Riots are and still are fighting for more freedom of expression and artistic freedom in their own countries, but they have a safety net. They have a safety network because they were recognized. So they have the backup of all of us already, like Amnesty, Human Rights Watch, you name it. We are all aware of those major artists. But what about the emerging artists, the young, the youth, and some of them, like LGBTQI plus artists, women artists? They are the most at risk, the most vulnerable people in our community are women and LGBTQ plus artists. I can't emphasize more about those people who are part of the most dire, like there are women and LGBTQI plus artists are facing harsher threats.
Can you talk a little bit about the nature of censorship and persecution of artists in the world? And I know that, for example, journalists are increasingly at risk as authoritarianism grows around the world, and not only in countries that we've often thought of as authoritarian, but authoritarianism seems to be growing everywhere in terms of free expression and certainly in the field of journalism. And how about in the field of the arts? Are you seeing repression increasing, and where do you think that comes from? And can you talk a little bit about sort of the nature of the kinds of censorship and repression, persecution that artists undergo? Where is that coming from, and how do you see it sort of in the big picture?
We are seeing the same trend than at the journalist field. Like the threats and violation against artists are only increasing and have increased since we started this project. And as I say, like the work that we are doing with the artists and connecting them with direct support and our kind of case list is very anecdotal. It's the peak of the iceberg. We are just a little program. There are many other important organizations that are working solely on the field of artistic freedom. The one I mentioned, of course, ICON, APF, but also the Martin Ross Initiative in Germany, the Index on Censorship in the UK. They are all receiving calls from artists. So the kind of the pattern is actually artists are facing more and more threats as authoritarian regimes are rising and kind of autocratic discourse are rising. And there are, like, I feel that I have seen a shift compared than in 2017. Like now artists are at the forefront of movements. And
Exactly.
They're not only the one, like doing a poster or doing a song for supporting a protest movement and a political upheaval in their country. They are at the forefront. They are the one rallying the community to push back against an orthodoxy, to push back against authoritarianism. And so since 2 years, we have seen a number of crises, and those crises started with a rigged election in Belarus in 2020. Then we have the coup in Myanmar last year, followed by the withdrawal in Afghanistan, so the huge and major Afghan crisis, which is a humanitarian crisis underway that have never disappeared. And we do have also an immediate crisis, which is a war in Ukraine. And this happened in February of this year. So all of those crises have seen artists playing a major role in this protest movement. And the backlash against them have been terrible.
But also something like Extinction Rebellion, where artists are often right out there in the front, theater artists, street artists, dancers, and also getting arrested, as in the UK or Europe.
We have seen performance artists in the streets, musicians getting arrested, from Belarus to Myanmar to Afghanistan and other countries. I mean, like, we had several coups in Sudan. I mean, there are a number of crises that this field has to deal with that was not at all at the level of the resources that we can bring. I mean, like, just right for Afghanistan, we have received more than 300 requests from assistance from artists just to Pan America, to art.
Yeah.
And my colleagues in Europe, some of them has received thousands of calls from artists in Afghanistan. Yeah. And in Ukraine now is also, like, most of the artists have stayed put. They want to fight for the countries. So there is no recipe fit all, to be honest, Laura. So when you ask me in terms of patterns, what we have seen is like you can't really compare the Ukraine war and the assistance that artists need in Ukraine right now with the assistance that Afghan need, in a way that Afghan artists, they mostly want to get out of the country because they cannot do anything. You cannot play, you cannot perform, you cannot dance, you cannot do anything under the Taliban regime. So they have no means of survival. There's a huge food crisis in Afghanistan. So people are dying of not, being able to feed their family.
By the way, that's because the U.S. froze all of Afghans' funds, right? These are complicated stories, of course.
Yeah, there are numbers of elements that are making the situation really bad, but I won't underplay the role of the US there, but the role also of all our democracy not really kind of providing any help to I think only the UN for now have UNICEF brought some assistance to Afghan, and it's not enough. It's really not enough.
Yeah. I'm curious about what you think. Well, two questions I have. They're sort of, I'm not sure, I guess they're related in my mind anyway. One is, why do you think artists are so persecuted? What is it about art that makes governments feel so threatened by artists?
Art and artists speak for all of us. This is something you don't need a language. Like, you are enjoying a piece of music. You don't need to understand what it means to be moved, to experience and experiment. And I think in authoritarian regime, but also in kind of what we talk about illiberal democracy, which is like India, Brazil, we are looking at also those democracy who are going in the wrong way, to be honest, and are starting really putting a lot of censorship and not respecting the freedom of their people. The artists play a bigger role than just providing, the work of art and making us enjoying the work of art, because it's understandable across languages and cross boundaries. They have realized, many of them, that with this power, they can change things in their own society. They have the power. And I feel that they realize a lot of artists that we have been helping out and assisting, they really don't realize that they are activists. And there's really, as you probably know, Laura, an artist doesn't want to be in a box that clear, you know. An artist will say, no, I'm not an activist. I'm just an artist. I'm doing my art, and I have no political agenda. And really, it's true. It's like they are talking about things that they are seeing in their community. So they challenge their community to kind of think differently, to bring more awareness of the situation of, for example, LGBTQ community in their country, or the situation of indigenous people in their country. And then they start receiving backlash, and they realize, like, what's going on? Why suddenly I'm under attack?
Mm-hmm.
Because they bother, because they have this voice, they have this important voice that is listened by the people, is listened by their audience, and they realize suddenly that actually they can activate the audience to do something more than just enjoying their work, just enjoying the work they are putting on out of the world, but also to take a stand. When you mentioned the risk that journalists are facing, and yes, definitely journalists, but artists as well, because they are the new kind of group who are kind of bringing at the forefront, are participating actively at those protest movements and bringing at the forefront of their community what is going on, what is going wrong in their country, and they are paying a harsh price for speaking out.
Yeah. So their artists are truth tellers in a very special way, and I think in ways which touch people in a very powerful way, because the arts enter through the senses. Huh?
Yeah, and it transcends boundaries. Art transcends boundaries. You don't have to understand it to enjoy it, and to experiment it and get, you know, around with it. So I think that's also the power.
Yes, I think we're living in a very, very interesting, also frightening time, but also very exciting in many ways, because on the one hand, you see this rise of authoritarianism and decrease of human rights, and I would say also in the so-called Western democracies, and as well as the countries that you named, for example, Brazil, India, where you have authoritarians who have come to office by election, but are behaving in authoritarian ways nonetheless. But you also see the rise of repression of critical voices, and I think it's a very, very interesting time for the role of artists, who do have this function of holding up a mirror and to society, and provoking criticism and stimulating change. And at the same time, our whole sector, if we kind of sketch it widely, is so massively under-resourced and underfunded and under-equipped to respond to this. So I guess my other question is, how do you keep your hope? How do you keep going, seeing the enormity of these problems, and with, you know, as much work as you do, you could, as you said earlier, we can't solve these big problems, but sometimes we can help people. But how do you personally keep going, and what are some of the successes that help you stay active in your own role?
I think this conversation is a testimony of what I feel is a success. Is like when I'm seeing more and more art groups and cultural groups who are really willing to either raise visibility about the challenges that artists are facing, their community are facing around the world, and enabling more resources, not only raising visibility, but enabling more resources. And one of the latest success that we had was this really kind of big grant making endeavor that we just started for Ukrainian visual artists and helping Ukrainian visual artists with emergency grants, resilience grants, through thanks to the support to an art organization, so the Ellen Frankenthaler Foundation from the painter Ellen Frankenthaler. So that I think brings me hope when I can see that the art world is taking more responsibility on, the threats, that artists are facing around the world.
Yes, thank you. Julie, how can our listeners support your work? Can they join your network? Can they subscribe? Do you have a newsletter? They just go to the website and everything is there? Is that the best way to start?
It's the best way to start. The best way to start is to go to artists@riskconnection.org. If you'd like to join, please join our network. You have on the footer, join ARC, and it will prompt you to a form that you have to fill out. And then once we receive it, we will contact your organization and see how you can help artists at risk with your own programs. We are playing with what resource you have and see if there's any way you can enable this resource to artists at risk. But also just subscribe to our updates. I promise not a blasting email every week. We have a newsletter every quarter, and we will send a few letters when we need some signature from your organization. We do a lot of advocacy, so you join our petition. I think it's really critical. Even you think, oh, but I'm a very tiny organization in Italy. What can I do? You can do. Your voice matters. Your voice is very important, and helping us to spread the word about our activities, but also on those specific cases where we need public advocacy, it's also critical. And so I think the first, I will say, as you say very eloquently, Laura, first check our website. You can join you can subscribe to our updates and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Our handle is @risk artist. So that's
thank you, Julie. This is a very rich conversation, and I'm sure many of our listeners will go to your website again, artists@riskconnection.org. Please go and visit them. Julie Trebault, it's been a great pleasure speaking with you. Thank you so much for everything that you're doing, and it's wonderful to reconnect.
Thank you so very much, Laura and R27 for the opportunity. It was really a pleasure to have the time to dive in all those important matters that we discussed this morning. Thanks again.
ReSounding is brought to you by the Art27 Network, a network of like-minded initiatives using art and culture to respond to the ongoing crisis of displacement of human beings in Europe and around the world. To find out more and to join our growing network, you can visit our website, art27.art, or follow us on Facebook @art27. This podcast was produced and edited by Ed Holland. The theme tune was written by Matteo Galesi in collaboration with SYNCR. Thank you for listening.